So how does the EU position itself in this standoff between the two biggest economies? I am aware clearly that the EU and China are likely to join hand in submitting the case to the WTO for the settlement. How much common language do we share, and what are the disputes between the EU and China with regard to the future of globalization?
It's a very difficult situation for the EU presently, because traditionally, as you know, transatlantic relations and economic exchanges have been kind of the pillar of economic activity here. So this is something that really requires kind of shifting now the perspectives. So many people are discussing WTO itself, actually, presently, because the attacks on the world trade, multilateral world trade system and World Trade Organization are seen by many as carrying a real risk of collapse, actually. And if multilateral trade regime, if this regime collapses, it's equally bad for China and the EU at the same time. So what is being debated presently is how to save, how to kind of renew the WTO system, the World Trade Order. And this is something that's bigger than just the present trade conflict that we see. So there's really real debate about how to kind of bring the US administration back to the table. And this probably will require more coordinated action between China and the EU in the next future.
I think that one of the aims, being such a disruptive president of Donald Trump, is definitely to further the destruction of the WTO. That's clearly one of his aims. And second thing, I think, Margaret, maybe you could elaborate on that. He makes it quite difficult for the WTO in acting, because he's arguing in a trade spat with security reasons. This is against the national security in the United States. Yeah, so it is difficult for the WTO to come in. But what should the EU do, and how should they sort of act at the moment?
I think we have lots of interest in common. We all want to have this multilateral trading system going further on, because we all have profiting from it. Germany especially.
And China.
So we have the same interest, and of course we want to preserve the WTO system. But it's not, as
Excuse me, Margaret, may I challenge your positive argument about the role WTO plays? In fact, we have been denied full-fledged market economic status by the European Union. To what degree do you think this further prevents our trade and economic exchange between the EU and China?
I don't think that it still plays a role, because we have changed our definition, as you had changed definition in your ideological area. We have changed the definition. There is no such thing as a market economy, a non-market economy. So if you look at dumping, we look at the specific conditions of companies, and this is a different story. But I think now there comes a problem with the relationship between China and the US, and our relations with the United States. It's more than economic relations. It's the political relation, and the US is being the guarantee of our security. So if we, for example, are not playing to their roles, if they can not persuade us.
If that could not be called a dispute, Sebastian.
Let me just one additional thought. Because WTO is so important to China and the EU, there is a real debate presently whether China wouldn't be in the position to sponsor a kind of, even people are talking about a Beijing round now, because the Doha round in the WTO, it didn't work out well. So to sponsor a Beijing round, to push forward the world trading system, to renew it, and to include all the new conditions that we have in the 21st century. This would be something that many in the EU would also hope for, that we could collaborate and in kind of updating this system, which is old, which is actually a 1990s system.
But why should the EU not go for a bilateral trade agreement with China? What is hindering this?
Perhaps Victor would have his strong voice on your question.
And I think the biggest challenge the world is faced with today is how to deal with the WTO. China definitely supports WTO. China wants to resolve all the trade disputes within the WTO system, whereas the United States seems to put itself above the WTO and is willing to trample the fundamental principles of WTO. And I think this creates a lot of problem in the world today. I think the challenge facing Germany and EU on the one hand, as well as on China, is to protect WTO. In this sense, I think China really is a beneficiary of the existing international order. China is very happy within the WTO. Of course, there are still some problems that China needs to continue to improve, of course.
For example, in the area of IPR protection, this is an issue that Europeans and Americans have been seriously concerned. What do you think of our huge efforts to invest in the digital technology and our campaign to buy high-tech products that has been barred by the Trump administration and his predecessors? Xu Dong.
Well, I'm no expert on this, but for me, free trade has never been an innocent concept. Even though we all say, oh, it's a natural good, it has never been something neutral or even objective. It's always to be determined by real-world power relationship. Germany was not an advocate for free trade historically, and America used to be the leader. Now it's taking back from its former position. I think different nations or regions' attitude toward free trade or global agreement like WTO reflects their respective productivity, manufacturing, general national economy, and so on. So I'm, for one, not particularly, at least intellectually, troubled by U.S. attitude. It reflects its real structural weakness.
Do you want then to say that because America has lost its competitiveness, it is no longer supporting the WTO?
To some extent, I think it's a reflection reality.